Copywriting is essentially words designed to sell. The art of selling with words is as ancient as the human voice itself. We communicate in society, in most instances, for a purpose: to be heard, to persuade. And those that can convince and convert with rhetorical, maybe not even rational, flourishes of fancy pants talking have an upper hand. Those that have a way with words can, in a sense, get away with a lot. But when it comes time to write words to convince and convert for a law firm with advertising and marketing communications, we seem to forget all that. So the ads typically made are either all rational, focusing on features and targeted on the close, or just creative exercises, unattached to the brand and business goals. Both types of ads leave most shareholders with a sense of wonderment as to what the marketing team is really up to. What if there was a way to get back to and embrace the ancient art of selling and compelling with words, and then use that knowledge to improve your law firm's marketing at a fundamental level? What if we started thinking about marketing communications as more than just channels to put content in, but chances to get the copy right with good copywriting? That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Copywriting, marketing, and selling with words. Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that understands you need it done by tomorrow, but I can't get to it right now. So let me finish this intro and then we can discuss it, okay? We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I'm Jake Sanders, and I'm joined by Paul Julius. Paul, we take words seriously on this show. It's the theme of the show. What's your favorite curse word?
Like multi-purpose. Multi-purpose, it has to just be. That's just the modifier everywhere. You can put it in front of, this, you, go yourself.
Yeah.
A flying
It's huge.
It is. It's useful. We use it a lot. But then, there's other ones where I think written and spoken are two different kind of arenas, I think.
Yeah.
So,
there's certain words. Yeah, certain words is when you see, Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah.
That's the magic word in baseball, man.
Yeah.
You want to get ejected?
In England, you can say. In America, can't say.
No, that is red line right there. You never want to ever say that word.
I'm glad that and I want people to know how we feel on those words. And I think this intro was a good time for us to just share that. Because words are serious.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's tough when you're doing these things. We have to be careful what we say sometimes. So it feels kind of good to just let out every once in a while.
Oh, yeah. Saying like mother.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
Let's keep it clean, though.
Okay.
Let's head towards this episode. Tell people what's on the show with your words right now.
On the show today, we're talking copywriting and why you probably suck at it. So first up is an article on the current state of copywriting from digiday.com. And then we interview copywriting pro, creative director, and contributor to the off-cited marketing book Eat Your Greens, Ryan Wallman. And then, because he's Australian and we had to convert to metric, we ask our guests 3.435 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The link today is from digiday.com. It's by the brilliant Mark Duffy. It's entitled, Copywriters Can't Even Come Up with a Decent Meaningless Tagline Anymore. I love it. It's so good. The cat's out the bag in this one. So I'll start it with his intro, and then we'll provide hot takes.
I think that title is missing a curse word.
It's amazing.
We'll just let you guys fill one in.
Well, no, he has. He filled. Don't worry, Paul. In the first paragraph, he has a couple for you. Industry experts keep insisting that taglines are dead, says Mark Duffy. But every year, taglines keep getting written. Bad taglines. Wanky hashtag lines that make for hashtags and even taglines. the days of taglines actually meaning something, like Avis's "We're number 2, so we try harder," or FedEx, "When it absolutely positively has to be there overnight." All those, the days of taglines are mostly gone. What's your thought on this? You found this. This is great. Mark Duffy is salty.
He is. He's salty, and those curse words feel good. And he says it in there. He says that
he's
in
loose
the
with
process. It says use curse words, write anti-taglines. So I always looked at copywriting as it really is an art form. It really is, and I think it's getting lost. And I love seeing him just rip into this. You know, the people I look for. You know, we talk about Luke Sullivan, David Ogilvy. You know, these people who really, you know, would spend a significant amount of time coming. I mean, they came up with those Avis lines. You know what I mean? Volkswagen.
Right. Yeah.
You know, all these things, and it's really tough to do it right. And that's why I think people just honestly just spew these things out. And there's a line in here where he says it. He talks about the clunky my way. It's I'm not going to go completely into it, but he doesn't like the meaningless ones like Coors, climb on.
He says climb on to what?
Yeah. Original is never finished. I love the one that says my way. It's meaningless blurb trying to pose as meaningful. Say it out loud. See how stupid it sounds? That's because it's stupid.
Yeah, he gives other examples. Lexus, experience amazing. You know, it doesn't quite make sense.
No.
Yeah, and then there's another one on iPhone, practically magic. Duracell, trust is power. I don't know.
You know, I found another article looking for this one too, where you know, the problem is that everything is becoming so derivative. And so when someone has success, you know, everyone looks at Nike, just do it. Just do it. Well, that was tremendously successful for them.
Three words. Yeah.
Exactly. So now everyone's like, that's what we need to be.
Got to have 3 words, 2 words.
3 words, you know, and everything is, it's just a dark background with just white letters.
Yeah.
And that's it. We don't need to explain it. It's so powerful. Like,
they'll make the connection. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was, you know, I always wondered, like, how many things did they go through before they got to just do it?
Well, you bring up a good point, because how many things did they go through? If you've ever been in a marketing meeting, if you've ever tried to work on taglines, you know, even individually for just fun things like a club you made, you know, when you were in 1st or 2nd grade, or, you know, we've been trying to brand ourselves or come up with fun names or superhero identities or, you know, names of businesses we want to launch. Like it's an old game, and it seems like when you become grown up, you want to get other people's feel. You want to say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? So everybody brings a little black, everybody brings a little white, and then you get a gray idea that comes out. And it's never really bold. It's just like an amalgam of everybody's input. And you feel like you've gotten somewhere. So it's relevant to everyone. And what Ryan talks about later and what we seem to profess on the show in regards to marketing is that you can't be afraid to sell, but you have to be compelling on behalf of what makes your brand unique, your services. You know, let's go for lawyers now. Trusted. Like, everyone's been trusted. You've been trusted left and right over here. You know, what are other words you can use that can draw some distinction to your brand? I think what you're talking about too is definitely a plague in legal, because you're looking at John Q law firm or Sally J Struthers law firm over here. You don't know, like, you're going with what's going for them. Who are you guys using in this most recent episode with Jess? You know, who are you using for this? That's who I'll use for this. Who are you using for that? So what does your website look like? Well, my website's going to look like that. So it all becomes derivative, and it's dangerous. But Ryan stands out talking about being distinct. Mark Duffy talks about it too, but he talks about the science, man. You showed me that Luke Sullivan book, and half of that book is how you research the problems. and how you interview people at the company and things that you don't think are just creative wordsmithing. You really have to look into these problems and find out what's the most compelling use of words, right?
I think so. And I think there's also a compelling is a fantastic word that you just used there. And it illustrates what I was going to say is that too many times, particularly in legal advertising, I don't know if it's because of bar association rules, or I don't know if it's that, or there's this perceived thing of like, well, we can only use words like, trusted.
Oh, yeah. And you
reliable.
can't say big E expert. You're right, though, Paul. You're right. That is a big thing there. Yeah.
But I do think there's another side of it. I know you and I, when we've worked on some of these things, I mean, we've had documents that are just pages of just, I guess you could just call them one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
And it always comes down to, what's the context? How does this sound? What does this represent? What kind of impact is this going to have? What kind of images would you place it with?
Mm-hmm.
What's the context that this ad is going to be in, or this article, this short form, maybe landing page is going to be in. I don't know that a lot of that stuff is taken into account when people are coming up with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
well, maybe it is.
But I mean, I think a lot of it is just Instagram.
Well, maybe they're thinking we live in an attention economy of people who are, stupider than fish. I don't know what the latest statistic is, but it's pretty sad. But that's not the truth. Everyone says, oh, well, they want snackable content. They only need 3-second ads. It has to be 2 words. If it can just be 1 word, if it's a monosyllabic grunt, like maybe we're onto something, like a tag sound, just like, like Geico. It's just a sound. It's not even a word. Like, you don't even have to get your lazy mouth going. You'd think that people are trending towards wanting snackable, bold, simple, dumb, easy to grasp, concepts. And it's the opposite. Because if you talk to anybody about the 10 hours of the Games of Thrones that they've watched, and about the legions and families and dynasties and sexual conquest and weird maps and trust falls and confidence games and schemes and weapons and how the political alliances are formed and what people are eating and how they farm things and what? You're telling me you can't pay attention? How can you pay attention to a completely made-up, invisible economy that lives in fear of dragons? And I need to make sure that all of my advertising is dumb as, it's just got to be completely dumb. It doesn't make sense. So at one point you think people want deep dives, 3,000-page screeds, and then on one side you just want an Instagram art card. But what you brought up was interesting. It's context. Where's it going to be? If it's on a billboard, could we say something about being there? Or is there, and so copywriters, creative marketers, advertisers think about that, but they spend a lot of time on the problem. Let me end with this. Do you have anything else to say, Paul? Because you're brilliant with this stuff.
No, I mean, the only other thing I would say is that I think you have to just go out there and do it. There's really no other thing. Like, you're not going to like go to some workshop.
You're right.
Or, read, no matter how many good books you read.
There are great books. And
and
good point, Paul. There are great books and there are great courses, but you have to do it. And Paul and I have traded documents. We have 100 taglines. Get it down to the best 10. Add more. Dwindle it down, get rid of everything, but research the problem. And that's why I wanted to end with Mark's, the way he ends on this Digiday article, because it's just fantastic. And then we'll go and talk to Ryan, who supports all of this methodology and all of this saltiness. And he brings a lot of hubris and humanity mixed with that hustle that we all love. And he'll talk about hustle too. But let me end this because he says there's no secret to the tagline writing process. You consume as much knowledge about the brand as you can. Let it all incubate in your brain and start writing. At first, you try to make sense. get a bad, inaccurate thesaurus, and start connecting words. Connect them in and out of order, then leave your senses and write any stupid thought that comes into your mind. Then get stoned and keep writing. Use curse words. Write anti-taglines, taglines that make the brand sound like the worst thing ever invented. Write 50, 100, 500 taglines. Eventually, you may get to something that's pretty good, but you may not. At that point, you want to kill yourself or go back to digging ditches for a living. Or you can keep writing. Now, somebody please write a good tagline this year so I can write a positive post for once.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Since 1999, ConsultWebs has been helping law firms connect with clients on the web, connect digital marketing success with firm success, and connect their business goals to proven strategies that help them get the most out of their legal marketing. Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a lawsome interview.
Ryan Wallman is Associate Creative Director at Wellmark, a creative agency that takes care of healthcare brands. With a Master of Marketing from Melbourne Business School, a medical degree, and more than 12 years of experience in copywriting, technical writing, and editing, Dr. Wallman's forte is the creative execution and direction of healthcare marketing communications. But he's so much more, isn't he? Brilliant satirical hot takes about marketing culture online, robustly funny work in the book Eat Your Greens, razor-sharp gift work on social media, all with impeccable copywriting in mind. It's my distinct pleasure to bring to the awesome audience from Melbourne, Australia, Ryan Wallman. Doctor, thanks for joining us today.
You're absolutely very welcome. Thank you for that introduction. I don't think I've had a better one, to be honest.
Well, thank you. It's all true, or we don't know, and we'll discuss that later. So start at the ground floor. Imagine we're all stupid. It's easy, and have no idea what copywriting is. Like, what would your definition be of copywriting and advertising, and how is copy more than just content?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think part of that is the reason that I saw someone on Twitter the other day make the point that the term copywriting actually derived from journalism, which I kind of knew, but hadn't really thought about a lot. And they were saying, well, that's it's really not the same thing, and it's a misnomer in many ways. So it might have almost been better if we'd just been called writers from the beginning, rather than copywriters. And obviously there is a big distinction between what we do as advertising copywriters and what journalists do. To me, copywriting is writing that ultimately serves to sell a product or service, whether that's in the short term for direct response copy or in the longer term for brand building copy. It is really ultimately all about selling. As David Ogilvy famously said, we sell or else. And that's the simple truth of it, I think, even though selling seems to have become a bit of a dirty word in the advertising industry these days. I don't know if you saw Rory Sutherland recently commented. He was interviewed about where he thought Ogilvy was heading, and his comment was that the entire advertising industry has completely lost the plot, and in his typically kind of frank fashion.
I love it.
Yeah. So, and he was really referring mainly to kind of the obsession that the industry has with media optimization, at the expense of creative effectiveness. But I think that the problem really extends to kind of an obfuscation of what the goal of advertising is. Everyone is so preoccupied with these fads like brand purpose and social causes and whatever else, that sales almost seem like an afterthought. Yeah. It really does seem that a lot of people in the industry are kind of ashamed of the fact that they are ultimately trying to sell something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, the essence of what copywriting is. And for me, the kind of the content trend, if you like, is part of that reluctance to be involved in the selling process. And personally, and this is absolutely no offense to people who are kind of involved or call themselves content marketers, but I personally don't like the term content. And part of the reason for that is that it often doesn't seem to have a very clear link to effectiveness. That's not to say that there aren't some excellent content marketers out there, and I certainly don't mean to devalue what they do, but I think they've been tarnished by the fact that there are a whole lot of kind of bad actors out there. You see people like Gary Vee is out there at the moment saying that, putting out 100 pieces of content a day or something. And you kind of have to just question, well, why? To what end are you putting that out there? And I think that kind of thinking is what is devaluing the role of copywriting. And I think it's kind of exacerbated this problem of people thinking that anyone can write, which a lot of us come up against.
It's strange. I never really thought of it that way. That everything that Gary Vee as an example is putting out is content. I mean, I thought he was just flooding whatever with whatever, and I always approached like content marketing as more of like I guess a strategy more like 80% informational, 20% sales. Like you're putting out articles and stuff like that. But that's a really good point, though, is that all those different little things are part of your content, what you're made up of. So,
yeah, and I was just going to say, I think you're absolutely, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the principle of being informative and not kind of doing the hard sell, but that's always been a part of copywriting. And I think it's kind of got mixed up with this idea of just kind of churning out content. And,
right.
And I think so there is a distinction there, and it's just, it's started to get a bit blurry, I think.
You're right.
The definition
Gary Vee's
is blurry,
putting out, some image he, peeled off free stock images with a quote. You know what I mean? And he's blasted it on Twitter, YouTube, blah, blah, blah.
And then if you're a local business, you're wondering, do I need to be doing that? And that's where the problem is. Other people can do whatever you want. You can use the inflatable wacky army waving inflatable guy, which I love, which just kills it all the time, that wavy guy. And that's for you to use, but does it work at the end of the day? And do you need to use it? And that's where I think is content that well defined, and then is copywriting well defined? And then, to that, like, what is that? So it's a good question, because it brings up the reality that is content this whole thing? Is it none of it? Is it all of it? Is it part of it? Should I market it?
You can't. I mean, honestly, if this guy's, like you said, it's no joke how much stuff. I mean, it's
constant.
Twitter and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm not going to spend the whole time ripping on Gary Vee, but the point is, he's kind of our straw man for this argument.
Sure.
How much can you think about what you're writing if you're just constantly blasting away these vapid little quotes and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, and I think you've touched on it there, that it works for people like him, but then the problem is that other people think that that's what they need to be doing for their business, and I think that's when it starts to get really dangerous.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you invest all these resources into literally just making content without any clear objective for it.
Yeah, but you're everywhere. You got 200 likes. And it's funny about that. So the next question, humor and wit and being clever, these aren't necessarily things that come to mind when we think of advertising, specifically for lawyers, but other stuff. But they are key ingredients for good copywriting, and particularly for effective ads. So how are serious businesses like law firms and healthcare missing the mark with copywriting, and how can they overcome it?
Well, I think I'd probably start by saying that I think we need a little bit of a caveat there, because I think humor is a very tricky one to get right and very easy to get wrong. And sometimes it's just not the right approach. There are times when it is inappropriate for a serious audience or for a serious communication. But having said that, you're absolutely right that writing in an engaging way is crucial if you want to connect with the reader, and it's something that seems to get missed all too often by kind of businesses that consider themselves to be serious. But having said that, I think in healthcare, certainly, in my experience, there is a real tendency to shy away from from the use of kind of witty writing or humour. And it just makes it all the more effective when it's actually used. And you can see, as soon as you see it, it stands out. And there's a great quote from G.K. Chesterton, who said that humour can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. And I think it's absolutely true in healthcare writing, and I'm sure you've probably seen the same thing in law too.
It's a great quote. I was reading something you wrote on LinkedIn about healthcare marketing also, that if it isn't this sterilized, bland copy, then there is this templates where you're just referring to everybody in the same manner. Like everybody wants to optimize their health, and I don't know if I quite hit it. And then it's also, are you talking to your specific audience? Does your product deal with the elderly populations, or is there some kind of there's also the way that you talk directly to the audience too, that maybe copywriting helps you get in, and humor is maybe that colloquial connection. But if it isn't humor, then what is that engaging writing that you're talking about? Is it just alliteration? Is it just a pun and done, or what are we talking about?
Definitely not puns generally.
Oh, okay. Whoa, here we go.
There's always a place.
Here we go.
Always a place.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of that. Obviously understanding the audience, as you say, but just being much more human in the way that you write. And I think in healthcare, there's a certain style to kind of healthcare advertising, or at least there used to be. And all healthcare ads really did sound and look the same. And that has actually changed to some extent in the last few years. There's been a real kind of embrace of creativity in healthcare advertising. That's been kind of particularly with the advent of Canline now has a healthcare festival dedicated to, and there's been a real kind of lift in the general standard. But certainly traditionally, everything sounded the same, and it was all kind of this anodyne mush, and certainly not kind of it just didn't engage, I don't think. But in terms of how it can be overcome, I think it's sometimes just a matter of, particularly with clients, demonstrating the difference between that really stilted, impersonal style of copy and empathic and warm and witty writing. And I think most people kind of understand that particularly once they see examples side by side. I don't know if you've done the same thing with law clients, but it becomes very obvious when you make it tangible with examples.
Mm-hmm.
And having said that, of course, there are systemic issues that often make that really difficult, and kind of contribute to this problem of anodyne copywriting. And generally speaking, healthcare and serious industries like it will have layers of bureaucracy and kind of multiple approval steps and so on. So it is very easy to kind of see the humanity get stripped out of your copy, and I imagine you've probably found the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also to maybe the marketers out there, what's your take on resilience? As you keep offering up these great ideas and they keep throwing out waters with babies in the bath.
Yeah.
And all you're like, oh, you're gonna want that baby. You have to say goodbye to a lot of those things. What's your take there, like resilience?
You have to learn it, I think. Well,
an experience. Yeah,
it really is a matter of experience. After a while, you kind of realize how hard you have to fight to get good work through. And I mean, ultimately, it's trying to persuade a client that it really is in their best interests, and that can be really difficult, as I say, particularly when there's kind of committees involved and that kind of thing.
You have to market your marketing.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, and I think advertising, the fact that advertising agencies seem to be very poor at advertising themselves now is kind of a reflection of that as well. It's a crucial skill.
Yeah, branding. So you are writing constantly, amazingly, very savagely, but very intelligently about the current state of the marketing industry. And so I wanted to challenge you And I just imagine us on a porch in the distant future, and you're surrounded by your grandchildren and some other strange children who have come around to hear your stories about this era of marketing, the current one we're living in. So how would you sum it up to your grandkids? I mean, Grampy wrote content. Are we going to be happy that, your grandma optimized the hell out of this website? Like, what do you think we're going to be telling our grandkids here?
That is a dystopian.
Well, I mean, it's happening. It's happening right now. We're up against ninjas and gurus, and eventually you're going to talk to your grandkids, and they'll say, "What did you do during this era of marketing?" And what do you think you'll tell them?
Well, firstly, thank you for those kind words. But look, I guess I'd say it was a strange era. A kind of an era when marketing lost its way to some extent. People in the industry talked a lot about things that didn't seem to have much to do with marketing at all. And some dodgy characters hijacked the industry and convinced people that marketing was all about technical wizardry and acronyms and so on. And I'd probably say that Grampy was a bit grumpy because marketers use lots of stupid buzzwords that meant nothing. Sorry for the language there, Sonny. And certainly didn't appreciate kind of the power of good copy and well-crafted copy. But, I certainly hope that I can tell them that it was a passing phase before the industry kind of came to its senses.
Talking about that, if you had one piece of advice for the legal marketers out there looking for advice on writing better ads, on getting better about understanding marketing, being better, about driving home that message, what would your one piece of advice be?
Well, I've been asked this question before, and my answer is always pretty much the same, which is that you need to study the basics of good copywriting. And that's a very boring answer, I know, but there's really no way around it if you want to improve your copy. Practically speaking, how can you do that? Well, I think a great place to start is one of kind of the introductory books about copywriting, like How to Write Better Copy by Steve Harrison, which is a bit of a classic. Could look at doing an online course. So Andy Maslin in the UK, who you may know, offers an online course that's very reasonably priced from what I can tell. And honestly, with those guys, you honestly can't go wrong in terms of kind of learning the fundamentals, and that's the key to it. If you don't know the fundamentals of copywriting, you're always going to be stabbing in the dark.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second, because one gripe I have been bringing up to Jake probably more than he'd like, is I get assaulted by these connections and stuff on LinkedIn, and then they follow up on email, and I swear they all have the same template for their these cold outreach emails, and it could be good, but it's not. And the problem is that it's just proliferated. It's like some guru life coach somewhere said, hey, here's the thing you need. Use this system and you're going to go and do it. And it's unoriginal. And that really makes me angry. Because I dig, David Ogilvy. I like Luke Sullivan. I like people who are saying, hey, being good at advertising and copywriting is hard, because you have to be creative and you have to get out of the box. And we have this stuff over and over again. It's the same repackaged crap. And that's how, sir? How do we?
Yeah, for real though. I mean, because a lot of people are looking.
How do you throw all that crap out and say, all right, you know what? Here's the point I start off with.
There you go.
Well, look, I mean, I think you've touched on an interesting point there, because I certainly don't agree with kind of using templates. But I think the difference with kind of particularly with those guys I've mentioned is that they appreciate that there is a role for creative copywriting. And Steve Harrison was kind of a famously creative person. And so it's it's kind of the old adage that you need to know the rules before you can break the rules.
Sure.
And so if you don't really understand those fundamentals in the first place, you're in trouble, I think. But then after that, yeah, of course, it becomes a matter of making yourself stand out and be distinctive and kind of not sound like everyone else. So that's the art of it, I guess.
Right. Well, but I think there's something about frequency that maybe we're sort of hitting on. Is there a new kind of? It's like I think it's right. I don't want to be caught selling or something. I don't want to be caught selling in your inbox with this email. So hey, oh, sorry, I'll get out of your hair. All of a sudden, I have this personal connection. I mean, if it's done bad, right? Is there a possible way to do these things right? Or is it the engagement and the frequency at which that just kind of makes it almost impossible?
Yeah. Well, I've been wondering about that too. Is like, is an email like this just the wrong place to be entirely?
Well, it must not be, because it must convert. And that's the reason you see Gary Vee making 100 things, or that person at the networking event handing out 100 business cards, or that person on social media saying, I got that copy game, or I got that marketing thing. You need me, hashtag, whatever, call me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's no different than spray and pray. You know what I mean? If you keep throwing your stuff out everywhere you go.
But I think how could you,
something.
But the question is, how do you counter people's belief that the hustle over time will not give you the long-term rewards? I mean, it's just not sexy long-term brand stuff. I mean, you find that you're grumpy. How could you take your grumpiness and take it to a strip club? Huh? I mean, I don't. Do you kind of get where
I like where you're going?
I have some money and I can put it in your underwear right now, depending on how this goes. Keep going.
I think. I think context is really important,
right?
And when you get those kind of the hustling LinkedIn requests and so on, they're often tone deaf. They don't sort of understand the context of what we were talking about before. When with content marketing, when it's done well, you build up a relationship through being useful and informative and so on, rather than sort of going straight for the hard sell. So I think it could be done a lot better. Put it that way. Yeah.
You're so diplomatic. That's why you're going to make it. You're going to make it to be that grandpa on the porch.
I will be.
Your help, your voice, and you actually live the examples that I think a lot of people just complain, or maybe they're contrarian.
No, I've definitely been criticized for that as well. So
no, but there's something about the way you turn it and the way you put a little spin on it that you sort of live what you're preaching, and that's something that I hope that authenticity could transmit, because it really ends up being embrace yourself as a seller. Do really good client-focused copy that is focused on relieving, some pain and some delivering some benefits, and then get out of there. I think, and respect the ears. When we started this podcast, Paul was like, I want to respect the audience's ears because they've invited us in.
Yeah, I like that sentiment. Nice.
But that's pretty intense. And so every time we do an episode, I just want to make sure that we respect where we are and respect the area and the marketplace. And I think maybe that's good marketing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, yeah. I agree.
Well, unless it's Gary Vee. I don't respect that guy's ears.
Oh, you gotta hustle.
I'm coming for you, Gary.
It's okay. It's okay. Continue doing your stuff. But just, my kids are going to college. So anyway, let's wrap it up, man. How can people learn more about you, Dr. Wallman?
Twitter is certainly where I'm most prolific.
Oh yeah.
So you can find me at Dr._Draper. And I'm also on the increasingly ridiculous site that is LinkedIn. You can search my name and you should be able to find me. I write for my agency's blog, although somewhat sporadically these days. You can find that at wellmark.com.au. And I've also written a few articles for Marketing Week in the UK, which is marketingweek.com, I think. And as you mentioned earlier, I did contribute to EU Greens, which, notwithstanding my part of it, is highly recommended. It's a really good book.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
What was the last book I read? Good question. Choice Factory, I think.
All right.
By Richard Shotton.
Yes. Number 2, what's your favorite place?
London.
Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Okay, sites. I'd say Marketing Week, Ad Teachings, which is Suzanne Pope's website. What was the next one? Podcasts. So the Take 5 Risks podcast is really good. Glenn Fisher's All Good Copy podcast is great as well. Yeah, they're probably the main ones. And what was the next one?
It's blogs, newsletters, podcasts, whatever.
Blogs, yeah. Well, Dave Trott's blog, definitely. Yeah, will that do?
Yeah, that's good. You passed.
We will accept that.
Thanks.
Number 4, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Vegemite. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah.
Sort of. I've heard it's like a fermented something or other. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
No?
it's based on a yeast extract, which makes it sound horrible. But if you're in Australia, you'd understand.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll give it a go. Number 5.
You'll hate it. You have to grow up with it.
No, I interfaced when I was working in New York. I had there was a family I knew, and they were from Australia, and they had their kids. I worked at a preschool, and they had Vegemite sandwiches. And
it's a staple.
They said, "Oh, you're going to hate it," and I was like, "Oh, I'm into it." And then me and my boss, but we were she was from South Africa, so there's just something going on down there. And you guys are into it, and we're into it too.
Our taste buds have evolved differently.
And plus, if you're on an island down there, you're more likely to have it. It's fine. It's a good answer. Let's move on.
Sorry.
Yes, let's.
Apparently, what sets me off is Gary V. What sets Jake off is Vegemite.
No, it sets other people off too. It's a very polarizing condiment. Oh yeah. Oh yes.
All right, we've made it to the end. Number 5. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Beer, mainly. And what else? I love listening to music, and I love watching Australian rules footy.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.